Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Human Performance Outliers podcast with Zach Bitter. Alright, everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Human Performance Outliers podcast. I'm your host, Zach Bitter, and I want to welcome everyone to this episode of the show. As a way to thank the listeners for helping me grow this podcast over the years, I'm going to continue a raffle option for all of you to have a chance to win a free consultation with me. So it's a 30-minute consultation that I will raffle off once per month. All you have to do to enter is share the episodes that you enjoy on whatever platform you find most interesting. The only thing I ask you to do is, if it's a social media channel, make sure you tag me so I see it and can save that and enter in the raffle. Or if it's somewhere else that you can't tag me at, take a screenshot and send that to me at hpopodcast@gmail.com. You can also enter the raffle by writing a show review on your favorite podcast listening platform. So if you do that, take the screenshot, send it to hpopodcast@gmail.com, and I will enter you in that monthly raffle. Also, I'm excited to announce that I launched a new group coaching option. So to go along with my personalized one-on-one coaching options and my pre-made plans that I have on my website at zachbitter.com, this year I'm starting a group of online endurance runners who want to work with me in a slightly different model. So this model is set up so that whether you're a beginner or advanced, you can join. Whether you're training for something like a 5K or something as far as a 200 plus miler, you are welcome, and this setup will help you reach your goals. The way I have it set up is, if you subscribe, you will have access to my full catalog of training plans, which range from beginner 5K all the way up to advanced 200 plus miles. Along with that plan that you're going to use, you will have access to a weekly group meeting where you can ask questions about training. You can ask about adjustments to the plan to make it more personalized to you. You can engage with the other group members if you want. We'll get you all set up and ready to really personalize that plan to make sure that you're heading in the right direction for your event. Also, you will have access to office hours, where if you have something you want to ask and you want to just hop in and ask a question, you'll be given access to that as well. I will be bringing in guest speakers who have a deep understanding of specific topics and things that we'll use to better your training and recovery process throughout the course of the year, as well as a private forum for all the members to engage with one another, share stories, share training tips, and just house a lot of the information that we'll go over on the daily and weekly basis as you're pursuing your race goals. So if you're interested in checking that out, just head to my website at zachbitter.com, go to the coaching tab. From there, you'll be directed to the team coaching option, and you can sign up for that and get onboarded to join the group. If you're interested in keeping up with what I'm up to, please give me a follow on some of my socials. Follow me on Instagram at ZachBitter, on X, Twitter at ZBitter, and check out the brand new HPO podcast handles, which are just at HPO Podcast on Instagram and X/Twitter. Of course, all this stuff can be found quite easily on my website, which is the main landing page for everything I do at zachbitter.com. Today's topic is going to be just me unpacking my mobility routine. So I have had a few episodes, actually one more recently, where I spoke with movement specialist Vinny Crispino. That's episode 388 for those of you interested who haven't listened to that one yet. And we went over all sorts of different topics around mobility, and specifically even we addressed kind of some of the stuff that I've been working on since around last year, when I began working with Vinny a little bit in terms of just kind of putting together a mobility routine that was, I think, a lot of good movements in general, but also specific to the things that I'm dealing with. So being someone who's been running now for, I think it's my 25th year of running in some capacity, there's just things that, you know, your body sort of like either learns to move really well within and other areas of compensation. And then one thing I noticed as I get older and just don't do as many kind of sports outside of training for races and things like that, I'm just not always putting my body through a variety of different positions or movements that maybe I would have when I was younger and playing team sports and doing more things like that. So I think having a mobility routine, a strength routine, participating in some other activities outside of running can be very helpful in keeping some of those movement pathways open so your body actually knows how to do them when you ask them to. Can be a big value add in terms of staying healthy and just feeling better. So for this episode, I'm just going to run through in detail the various components of my mobility routine. And then I'm also going to touch on how I've begun to start to embed some of the core movements from this into other things that I'm doing during my day-to-day life. So they sort of become more part of what I do, or another way to look at it is rather than sitting down and dedicating a set amount of time towards the mobility routine, these are just movements that I'm including during my day while I may be doing other things, and they're kind of more passively being employed in those areas as kind of a 2-for-1. So let's get into it. My mobility routine that I do more structured, and this is one of my biggest actual aha moments with mobility in general, was actually my mindset originally was always like mobility and stretching type of stuff were things that you could do like before a training session to kind of ease that startup or that warm up. So you feel better when you maybe take that first step for a run or when you go and do that first movement in the gym. And I quickly learned after working with Vinny and putting a real mobility routine in place that it really didn't matter so much when I did the routine as long as I was consistent with it. If I was consistent with it, my body just kind of knew how to move in the ways I wanted it to, and it didn't really require a warm-up the way that I had historically thought of it. So this first kind of core mobility routine was the one that I started putting in consistently every day. And in fact, in some cases, I did it a couple times a day and just got really good at having this be part of my routine and something that I would rely on to allow me to get into training and feel better when I would do that stuff. So a lot of it is on the ground type stuff. So I'm going to explain this as best as possible for the auditory listeners here so that you can make sense of it. If you are having a harder time kind of visualizing what I'm saying, I do have on my Instagram page, which is just @ZachBitter, pinned to my profile some of these movements that I'm going to talk about today. So if you want that extra visual, there is an opportunity to see it there if you're interested. So I start out with ankle rotations, and for this one, what I'll do is I will lay on my back on the floor and I will take one leg at a time. And what I'll do is I'll start with both my legs straight out. Then I'll choose one leg. Usually I'll start with my right leg and I'll raise that up to a 90-degree angle so that my shin bone is parallel to the ground and my thigh is perpendicular to the ground. And from that position, I will rotate my ankle counterclockwise for 60 seconds and clockwise for 60 seconds. And then I will do a dorsal plantar flexion, so forward, backward with my foot and ankle for 60 seconds. So that's a 3-minute movement for each of those spots. And it sounds pretty basic and pretty easy, but if you haven't done this in a while or at all, you'll notice when you do this, it really does start to burn. So it's a little more challenging than maybe it sounds on paper or while listening to, but I challenge you to do it if you haven't in a while and just see what happens. One thing to think about is there's no real reason to force pain. So if you're having a hard time getting a really clean rotation with those ankle circles or that dorsal plantar flexion, you don't necessarily have to fight that. You want to kind of get up to that point where your body's like, oh, this is the spot I'd like to stop, and just kind of challenge that until what you'll notice is over time, you'll get better mobility in that area. And what you might notice if you're like me, when you're doing those ankle rotations, that at first you don't really get a very clean circle. There may be a spot where, oh, I have really good wide sweeping range on this side, but when I get over to the other side, it's like I hit a block and it just doesn't rotate out as far. Pay attention to that because that might just highlight some stuff where for you specifically, your range of motion differs depending on where you are within that rotational circle. And if you do notice a spot that's maybe behind the rest, it's probably good just to be able to account for that and watch for some progress there as you kind of continue this sort of thing. So the next movement that I do is a hip flexor movement. And this one is also on the floor. So I'll lay on the floor just like I was for the ankle rotations. And what I'll do is I will place my right ankle over my left thigh. Similar to like if you're sitting in a chair and you cross your legs with your leg stretched out to where your ankle's on your thigh versus it totally wrapped over. And then what you want to do is with that leg that is still straight with the other leg on top of it or the ankle on top of it, just slowly lift that up as close to a 90-degree angle as you can. Again, so that shin bone is parallel to the ground and that thigh is perpendicular to the ground. And then your other leg with your ankle on the thigh will get lifted up with that. And what you want to do with this one is you just want to hold that position for about 60 seconds. When you finish with that first leg, then switch and do the same thing with the other leg. And for this one, I think it's interesting to kind of pay attention to a couple of things. One is, do you have similar or different range of motion in terms of how easy or how far you're able to drive the one leg up versus the other leg? Maybe you have some variances there. Another one is just relatively speaking, how difficult is it to hold that position? Because when you do hold this position, what you're training that hip flexor muscle to be kind of in a static lifting position almost while it's supporting the other leg that is on top of it. So that's the next one I'll do. Then what I'll do is I will pull out a bench. Typically, you could use a chair for this as well if you wanted to. I use a bench. And you want to just sit on that bench or chair in an upright position. So sit like with really good posture. And then take a yoga block or something similar and place that between your knees so that your knees are holding that yoga block in place. And in that upright seated position, what you want to do is push inward on the yoga block with both knees and then release. And repeat that for 60 seconds. So sitting nice and tall, yoga block between the knees, pressing in, releasing, doing that for 60 seconds. That's the next movement. After that, I will stay on the bench, but I will bring a slant board in here. So what I'll do is I'll take that slant board and I will place it so that it's facing me or the slant is going up away from me. And I will put my feet flat on that slant board so that my shin bones are perpendicular to the ground and my feet are on that slant board. They would be just flat on the ground if there wasn't for that slant board. That slant board just raises the toes up and keeps the heel kind of planted. And from that position, I will place that yoga block between my knees again, and then I will lift my heels up and down in that seated upright position, and I'll repeat this for 60 seconds. So it's sort of like what you would imagine like a calf raise would look like if you were just doing it seated and a slant board on the ground underneath your feet with a yoga block in between your knees. Next, I'll move over to some shoulder rotations. So just for some clarity for folks, you may start noticing a theme here. My issues, a lot of them are ankle, hip, and shoulder related. So a lot of the movements that I have in here tend to be focused on those three areas or include different kind of movements within those three areas. So these arm rotations are going to be the introduction of the first one of the shoulder movements that I do. So for this one, I still sit on the bench, just like I did for those last two. And again, I place the yoga block between my knees. And while seated in the upright position, I'll raise my arms stretched out, like a wingspan out from one side to the other with each of them. And then with my arms stretched out like that, I will rotate my arms in small circles forward for 60 seconds. And for this one, I'll have my palms facing down. And then what I'll do is I will flip my palms up with my arms still reached out. And then I will rotate in the circles in a backward direction. So for another 60 seconds. So those two different shoulder movements just really help kind of get that shoulder loosened up and extended its range of motion, which for runners is going to be useful when you're out there with your arm swing, kind of keeping that within like a proper gait cycle. So after that, I switch back to the floor. And for this one, I'll lay on my back, but I'll still keep the bench or a chair nearby because I want to put my feet up on it. So I'm laying on my back, think with my heels rested on the bench, so they're kind of propped up there. And what I'll do then is I'll put a yoga block between my feet. So I'm kind of pinching that yoga block or holding that yoga block between my 2 feet on the inside. And then from there, what I'll do is I'll dorsal flex, so pull towards me that block. So if you can think of it like that block is sitting on the bench, my heels are on the bench with that block in between it. I pinch them together to grip that block with my feet, the insides of my feet, and then I just dorsal flex my feet back, and I just hold that in a static position for 10 minutes. So this one was really challenging for me at first because when I thought, okay, dorsal flex that block back towards me, naturally I pulled it as far as I could get away with, which would be fine if I was doing it for a short period of time, but trying to hold that position for 10 minutes becomes very challenging if you try to go to the maximum flexion point that you have available to you. You'll really start to feel that burn and that strain after a couple of minutes. So if you do this one, the first time you do it, it may be better to kind of first pull back and then sort of relax it just a little bit, because keep in mind, you're going to want to be holding this for 10 minutes. And what you'll notice is over time, the point at which you're able to pull back in that flexion position will get deeper into that without as much strain, and that's a progress monitoring point you can watch for. All right, so the next one is another hip one, and this one I'm on my back again. This time I'm lying on my back with my feet up on the wall. So I'm on my back, my feet are kind of forming a 90-degree angle with my shin bones parallel to the ground, thighs perpendicular to the ground, and that 90-degree angle. And I want to move my feet about 6 to 12 inches apart. And once I have them there, I want to hinge my feet onto the outside edges of it. So if I have my feet flat on the wall, I just want to take both of those feet, and essentially what you're going to be doing is you're going to be opening up your hips, but using that outside side of your foot to kind of hinge along the wall. So keep that touching the wall. You want to make sure those stay put there. And with that position, you want to hinge in and out with your hips opening and closing for about 3 minutes. The next movement, I stay on the ground, but I'm seated upright for this one with my back flat against the wall. So this one's going to be a bit of a hamstring stretch. So with being seated upright, my back against the wall, and I want my legs straight out in front of me. Just sit there at first and just allow your hamstrings to kind of like sink into that stretching feel that you're going to get from that. Some of you who have like very flexible hamstrings may just feel like this is like a super comfortable place to sit and it's not a challenge at all, in which case you can probably move on to a progression right away. But for me, my hamstrings were tight enough where just seating in this position for an extended period of time, I could just feel that stretching. So at first I just kind of got comfortable with being in that position, like allowing my body to start to renormalize that amount of stretching in that particular position. Over time, what I do in order to kind of make it a little more challenging or get a little bit of a deeper stretch is when you're seated like that, just flex your quadricep muscles. If you flex your quadricep muscles, what you notice, you'll feel that kind of tightening in your hamstrings and that stretching in your hamstrings. And if you want to progress it even further from there, you can actually raise that leg up off the ground. So keep the leg straight, but pick that heel up off the ground. And again, you'll feel that stretch in that hamstring as a progression to this lift. The next one that I would do in the structured routine is a tall kneeling hip flexor stretch. So for this one, I'll kneel with my left leg while placing the right leg out in front at a 90-degree angle with the right foot flat on the ground. So again, kneel with left leg while placing right leg out in front of you at a 90-degree angle with that right foot flat on the ground. In order to really help do this one right, because with this movement, usually when people start to try to engage the stretch for their hip flexor, they'll end up kind of just like leaning way too far into it versus actually getting that hip flexor to stretch in the best possible way. So in order to help with this one, once you're in that position, before you decide to lean forward and stretch that hip flexor, squeeze your glute muscles. What that'll do is it'll help lock your pelvis into position. Then lean forward onto that right leg and hold that for 20 seconds. Repeat this 3 times and then do the same thing with the other leg. And when you're doing this, you should really feel that stretch kind of go across the front of your hip on the side that you're working. For the progression for this, if that's really easy for you and it doesn't feel like you're getting much of a stretch, or you've done it for a while now and you're ready to add something to it, there's a couple progressions you can use with this one. One is while you're doing that stretch, that lean forward, also just lean sideways towards the leg that you're working on, or the hip flexor that you're working on, that side. And that will help also add a little bit of extra stretch to that movement. A second progression would be with that trail leg, which at this point in time is just being a brace where your knee is on the ground, your shin is parallel to the ground, also likely resting on the ground to some degree. What you can do is you can take a block or a chair or something and raise that foot up so that you have that coming off the ground. In this progression, you can actually do in stages. You could start with just a few inches lifting it off the ground and then just continue to raise it up as you get comfortable. To the degree where some people will do this where they're actually up against the wall and their trail leg shin bone is actually flat up against the wall and their knee is still of that plant on the floor, but it's up against the wall to the degree where they're getting like that really, really deep quadriceps stretch along with the stretch of the hip flexor that they're doing with this movement. So that's another progression you can add to it. I haven't gotten that far yet, not to the degree where I'm putting it up against the wall anyway. I have done it at some points when I'm feeling pretty loose, in a little better range of motion with like a yoga block back there to kind of give it a little bit of an extra challenge. So that's kind of like the majority of what I will do from like a structured manner, where it's like, okay, I'm going to do this mobility routine. I'm going to sit down and actually go through these steps and these movements and kind of keep that in my daily training. Here are some discounts and promos for the HPO sponsors. Delta G Ketones has 20% off with BITTER20 promo code, and they also offer free consultations to help you assess how their product would best fit your lifestyles. Head to deltagketones.com. Element Electrolytes has a free sample pack with purchase and satisfaction guarantee, meaning if you don't like it, they will give you your money back, no questions asked, and you don't even have to return the box. Go to drinklmnt.com/HPO to get that free sample pack and try out all their flavors with your purchase. John G. Apparel has 10% off with promo code BITTER10. Check out their AFO shorts if you're in the market for a new pair of running or gym shorts. That's johng.com, JANJI.com. S Fuels has a 15% site-wide discount. Go to sfuelsgolonger.com. All links, promos, and discounts can be found in the show notes as well as every episode landing page. You can also check out a full description of how I use all of these products in my own training and racing at the end of this podcast episode. What I start to do at this point, once I kind of get comfortable with that, is rather than just doing the whole routine daily as often as possible, I'll start to kind of do this in pieces where I'll find times during the day where I have an opportunity to say, do like ankle rotations or stretch hip flexors and things like that while I'm maybe doing other things. So some examples of this would be like if I'm sitting at my desk just reading emails or reading an article or something like that, it's pretty easy just to kind of lift one leg up and do ankle rotations and counterclockwise and clockwise and then dorsal plantar flexions. So that's just something that I've gotten like pretty intuitive with, where now I hardly even think about it. I'll just be, if I'm sitting there for a while, my mind will sort of just go, oh, I might as well do some ankle rotations. So I'm sort of getting extra stimulus to that, and sometimes that is where I'm getting the stimulus for the ankle rotations, just while I'm doing other things. Another example of this would be if I'm sitting at my desk and I'm, again, reading emails or articles or something like that, editing a podcast. I can just lift my one leg up and rest that ankle on the thigh of my other leg and get that stretch, kind of like I had when I'm lying on the floor for that structured version of this. And just sitting in that position is going to give it access to that range of motion and that stretching position that I was working on before. So it just kind of helps keep it available to me. Another one of those arm rotations. This was another really easy one to do while, again, you're reading something or you're listening to something. It's something you can do pretty passively, where if I'm just sitting doing those sort of things, then I'll just decide, okay, I'm going to do some shoulder rotations and just do that movement while I'm doing something else. Another great one that I'll do too is I just created a work environment where I'm not always in the seated position. The way I like to think of sitting is people like to look at chairs and sitting as, okay, that's a problem. People are sitting way too much. And they're right. The problem with seating isn't that, or chairs isn't that particular position so much as that we spend a ton of time in that position. And since it's comfortable enough, we're really not moving into other positions. So over time, we just lose access to those. So some things, what I'll do is I'll just get on the floor with my laptop or my phone. And if I'm doing something that doesn't impede my ability to do, I'll start just working on that stuff while sitting on the floor. And what ends up happening is, since sitting on the floor is way less comfortable, you just don't stay in the same position. So if I'm kind of sitting in one spot with a specific angle and brace points, after a couple of minutes, I kind of get like tired or fatigued from that position. I'll just automatically kind of like shift my weight to the other side or move to a different position. And what I'll notice is if I'm doing that for, say, like 30 minutes, I find that I'm moving into probably dozens of different positions over that period of time and creating all these different access points that I wouldn't be getting if I'm just sitting in a chair. I don't know the exact number, but I've seen things that will suggest that when you sit on the floor, you're actually exposing your body to like hundreds of different positions, and that availability just creates many of those access points. So give it a try and see what you think. I'm sure you'll notice that you find yourself in a variety of different positions just out of for comfort seeking. Another thing I'll do is just like if I'm just going about my day, like maybe I'm like down in the kitchen getting something to eat or waiting for something to finish boiling or microwaving or whatever it happens to be, and I'll just like, rather than just standing there and waiting, I'll like just drop down into kind of like a squatted position and just hold that position for a while. Or if I'm sitting at my desk reading something and recognize, okay, I've been sitting in this chair for a while, well, I can read and just sit in a squatted position for 30 to 60 seconds and just kind of embedding that into my day so that I'm kind of getting access to that position just multiple times throughout the day has really kind of opened up my range of motion within that position or kept it more available to me. Other things I'll do is within kind of my work environment, I have my normal desk where I do have like a desk chair. And then obviously, like I said before, sometimes I'll get onto the floor with my laptop or phone and do some stuff down there. Another option I have too is I have a standing desk where I'll have a platform where I can put my computer on top of that and be in a standing position. And sometimes I'll just stand and do stuff if I'm like on like a Zoom call or something like that. But what I try to do is I try to actually like amp that up a little bit too. So I've made use of different tools like the slant board that I use for the mobility routine. I'll have that sitting in front of the standing desk. So I'm actually standing on a slant board versus just flat on the floor. I've also got some similar things that are sort of progressions of the slant board to some degree, where it's just like a wobble board, where it's just this like circular board that is on top of like a half circle or a half of like a ball. And because of that, it tilts in any direction. So standing on that just creates like a lot of different small little movements and flexions in my lower legs and my ankles and my hips as I'm kind of keeping myself steady and braced on that. So I will do some stuff standing on that from time to time while I'm working. And the other one I have is this little ankle board. And really what it is it's kind of like this two pieces of wood that are connected by just like a piece of rope. So you can kind of twist and turn those two pieces of wood. And then underneath, there's these Velcro strips that you can put these little blocks. So you can put these blocks in different positions to create that board to kind of tilt part of the foot while keeping the other foot stationary and moving it around. So I can have that on the floor with one foot on it and just really doing these different like ankle, like varied positions throughout the course of the time I'm standing on it, which I think is just it's sort of mimicking like what I would imagine if you're running on a trail that has varied terrain, where like when your foot plants on the ground, it doesn't just hit this exact same spot every time like you might on a track or a road. You know, maybe sometimes you're on like an angle to your right, then maybe an angle to your left, maybe then a slightly downward sloped angle. So you're just getting all these varied positions of how your body needs to stabilize and support itself through the running cycle when you're on those varied terrain trails. So for me, since I'm not on those as often, especially when I'm doing road and track related training stuff, I'll have that ankle board under my standing desk that I can just stand on for a little bit here and there while I'm doing work on that. One final thing that I'll do too, along with all this other stuff, is I have these daily exercises that just sort of kind of keep, I think, range of motion more available to me in a kind of an extended framework compared to what I would normally get in my normal running gait cycle. And that's just basically, it's like a 3 to 4 minute routine that I'll oftentimes do like before a run, before a strength session, or if I'm sitting a lot during the day, I'll just get up and do it just to get myself moving around a little bit so I don't feel like I'm just staying in that one spot for very long. And these are leg swings. I'll do left, right, forward, and backwards for about 30 seconds each. I'll do forward lunges, just 10 of them, reverse lunges, just 10 of them, box steps, just 10 of them, and then single leg hip thrusts, 10 each leg. Yeah, so it's like 3 to 4 minute quick routine. I like to call it just my daily exercises. And when I'm consistent with those, I find like that my ability to kind of like move side to side comfortably, or if I would trip while running on a trail or something like that, and I brace myself in kind of an awkward position, it's not like this shock to my system because I haven't moved in that direction or that way in such time that I'm pulling or injuring something. So that's it. That's kind of the deep dive into my current mobility routine. I don't know that it's necessarily something that I would say everyone should just like take this step by step and do it themselves, because it was built specifically for me, and some of these things I've added based on my own needs, strengths and weaknesses and things like that. But I do think a lot of these movements are probably worth exploring and just to see how you feel within them. If you find some that are really challenging for you versus others that just come quite easily, you may be able to identify kind of where your specific strengths and weaknesses are and ultimately put together a mobility routine that is going to be productive for your health and well-being within whatever sport it is you're doing. So thanks for tuning into this episode. Hey everyone, if you are here, you have stuck around to hear more about how I use the products that sponsor the Human Performance Outliers podcast. I have taken a lot of time identifying these products and brands, and I'm incredibly grateful that they are both products that I'm able to use sometimes on a daily basis, and they also are interested in supporting what I'm doing here at the Human Performance Outliers podcast and want to work with me. So here's how I use them. Delta G ketones is a product I've been using for just over a year now. I started using them early last year as a test to see if it was something I was going to want to use in my training and racing. I wanted to stress test them in something longer, so I actually used them at the Rocky Raccoon 100 as my first kind of test of will these handle for the duration of a 100-miler versus just what I would notice in kind of day-to-day workouts and things like that. And they are something that I'm going to keep in my routine. So my basic go-to is the Delta G Performance. The reason I chose Delta G over all the other exogenous ketone supplements out there is they have a formula and a dosage that is supported by the research that we have to date. So they are the company that got the DARPA funding to design for special forces. They've done 50 plus published studies, 20 plus ongoing studies. My protocol with them is just to take a single bottle of that Delta G Performance before a key workout or before a race. And if I'm going to be doing a race that spans longer than 3 hours, I will take another bottle every 3 hours while I'm out there. So if you're interested in more details about exogenous ketones and Delta G specifically, I would encourage you to check out episode 351, Exogenous Ketones and Performance with Brian McMahon. You can also right now on their website, they understand that this is something that is new for people, and they want to make sure that you are using it right and that you know what you're doing. So you can do a free consultation with them if you go to their website at deltagketones.com. If you do decide, hey, I want to check this stuff out and see what my experience is like, you can get 20% off and let them know you support HPO by using promo code BITTER20. That's BITTER20 for 20% off at deltagketones.com. Element Electrolytes has been my electrolyte of choice for quite some time now. They're actually back sponsoring the podcast for the third year. It's how long I've been using them. I actually got my sweat test done last summer where I found out that I lose 614 milligrams of electrolytes for every liter of fluid that I lose. And it's not uncommon that I'll lose a liter plus of fluid per hour, especially when it gets a little bit warmer. So I'm usually using electrolytes in my workouts, especially as they go beyond an hour or if the temperatures are a little bit warmer or if I'm just going through a lot of fluids for one reason or the other. My protocol right now is I'll do a half a pack of one of their chocolate flavors in my coffee in the morning before my morning training session. And then I'll do another half a pack to a full pack of usually watermelon in my fluids that I'm taking on during and after that workout. Their product specifically has 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams of potassium, and 60 milligrams of magnesium. So you can go a long way with one packet. Some of the other flavors they have available are citrus, watermelon, orange, grapefruit, raspberry, chocolate, mango chili, chocolate caramel. They actually right now just rolled out their seasonal options. One reason to keep an eye on Element is they will do seasonal releases where they have limited time offers. And right now their seasonal option is chocolate mint, chocolate chai, and chocolate raspberry. If you check them out and you like that sort of idea of mixing something with your tea or coffee or your hot chocolate, if you want to make yourself some hot chocolate with this, you can do that. Definitely check out the mint and the chocolate raspberry. I love both of those. If you do want to try them out, you can actually get a free sample pack right now with your first purchase. You just have to go to drinklmnt.com/HPO. Put in that /HPO, and that will offer up that free sample pack, as well as let them know that you're a supporter of the Human Performance Outliers podcast. Last year, some of my trail running friends told me I needed to check out this brand named Janji. And when it came time to update my running apparel, I thought, okay, I'm going to check these guys out. I'm stoked that they want to work with me because I've ended up using this stuff for way more things than I actually thought I would. My main focus when I'm picking out workout gear, and specifically running gear, is how does it actually like sit on my body while I'm going through the different mechanics that are important to running or strength work and things like that. So the more a product can function the way it's supposed to, but stay out of the way, the better, as far as I'm concerned. So their kind of lightweight, breathable, moisture wicking type of setup works really well for me. They're shorts. They're AFO middle short. I actually got 2 pairs of these, and I find myself using this for everything, basically. Like, I've used them for short intervals. I've used them for long intervals, taken them out for long runs, easy runs. I even go to the gym with them. So I need both those pairs. I've been going through them. They have an odor-resistant tech to it, too, so I can usually get a few workouts out of them before I need to wash them. And I just find, like, my range of motion is great in it, regardless of whether I'm doing those short intervals, long run in the gym, doing mobility routine type stuff, or like muscular endurance strength stuff, and all sorts of different activities. So that short is going to be in my rotation even when the temperature picks up. I got a couple long sleeve options too from them. There's the Repeat Merino long sleeve and the Rover Merino hoodie. So the Repeat Merino I've been using as kind of like either a base layer if it's really cold out that I'll put on first and then something else over it, or if it's just kind of chilly where like a t-shirt or a singlet isn't quite enough and I may want it for part of the run but not all the run, or maybe I want it for the whole run but I don't want too much so I feel like I'm sweating profusely underneath that. This is perfect for that. So I'll use it over the singlet or just straight up first layer on and then something over top of it. The Rover Merino hoodie is one of the things that I'll use as kind of an outer layer. I'll put this over that merino long sleeve, and this one has a few extra features to it. It's a little thicker, so I can get away with it in a little cooler weather, but it also has like a hood that you can put up and then a face mask that covers part of your face that you can use too if it gets especially chilly out there. I've been using this both for the running workouts as well as taking it to the gym from a transportation standpoint as I'm getting there, and then during my warm-ups and things like that as something I can kind of count on. Both these items are super light and packable too, so if I do have a scenario where I think I might need it for part of the workout but not all of it, I don't hesitate to bring it because I know I can take it off and store it pretty easily if I need to without having to worry about feeling like I've got this like extra thing coming with me that is getting annoying. The next item I got from there was the tights. Now, tights are products that I am very skeptical about usually because I always end up having this situation occur where they either feel like too tight and restrictive or they feel like they're sagging on me. So I'm either feeling restricted by them, or if I don't feel restricted, I feel like I'm constantly trying to pull them back up or find a way to like fit them on me so they don't sag down. And it's just this constant battle where I just usually avoid wearing tights if I have to. These ones are much different than that. I'm loving these. I'm wearing these on all the cold weather days where I want that full protection layer, and they sit on me so perfectly. I can even stuff stuff in the side pockets. They've got these side pockets on either side. I put my phone in there. I've even taken my outer layer off and rolled it up and stuffed it in that side pocket. I don't feel like it's creating a situation where it's getting in the way or causing it to sag. Also, full range of motion. I've used this for faster runs and slower runs, and that's usually my test. If I can do a speed workout in the tights, then that's great, because that means I'm moving through my gait cycle smoothly. And if they're not sagging on top of it, that's a bonus. I also picked up their Atlas multi-pant, which is a little bit more robust than the tights. So if you're looking for something for more of an outer layer, a little warmer, this would maybe be a little bit of an option. I've been using it on colder days for running, and just as a way to wear something warm to get to the gym, or during my warm-up during that. I love these because they taper down really nicely, so I'm not catching it on the side of my shoe as I'm going through my gait cycle or a movement in the gym. But they also have these really long zippers on the side, so if I do want to peel them off or put them on, I don't have to take my shoes off or feel like I'm fumbling around with it a lot. They also pack up real nicely too, so you can roll them up into the back pocket, and then if I do find that I'm taking them off partway through a workout, I don't feel like I have this like extra piece of gear that's like bogging me down much. If you're interested in checking out John G, you can get a 10% discount. Use promo code BITTER10, that's BITTER10, and go to johng.com. That's JANJI.com. And if you do like to shop at REI, they are also available there. One of the reasons I came across S Fuels originally is it maps my protocol perfectly. So at S Fuels, they follow a principle of right fuel at the right time. This means that they don't demonize carbohydrate, but they understand the power of a low carbohydrate diet. So throughout my year, I have ranging inputs between fats and carbohydrates, but they're always based in a foundation of fats. S Fuel's approach matches that just right. It allows you to build a foundation in your nutrition with fats, but also gives you options to pull that powerful lever that is carbohydrate when you need it. So in their product line, this is how I use it. Race Plus, that's their carbohydrate source. I'll use this for faster workouts or for races when I'm trying to defend muscle and liver glycogen. Train is their fat-based powder, which is basically a sports drink powder, but with fat instead of carbohydrate. Helps improve fat oxidation rates. I love it for workouts where I need some calories. I don't want to run a huge deficit, but I don't want to introduce carbohydrates. Side note, this actually makes a great high-fat smoothie as well. So if you're interested in that, check out my Instagram reels. I've got some smoothies on there that I've used this for. Revival is a protein powder that I will use post-workout and post-race a lot of times. This is something I can easily mix into something like full-fat yogurt or in that high-fat smoothie that I mentioned. Using this just makes sure I'm getting off on the right foot with the recovery process and maximizing my protein muscle synthesis. Next is Primed. Primed is my go-to caffeine source when working out. It gives you 80 milligrams of caffeine, but they make it in a way where it will help with focus, won't have jitters, and can help you with the fat oxidation benefits of caffeine consumption, as well as the reduction in perceived effort. Life Bars are my go-to snack. If I'm doing a pretty big training block and I need something between meals, Life Bars give me some healthy fats and protein that'll fit right into that. Finally, Keto 3. Keto 3 is a product that I'll use basically to replace anything I would have used granola for in the past. So I keep a bag of this around and I can sprinkle that on top of things that I would have previously put granola on when I want to keep the fats and the proteins high and the carbohydrates low. If you want to learn more about these products or check them out, head over to sfuelsgolonger.com, where you can get 15% off your order. And this year, stay tuned because I'm going to be doing a series of free sample pack offers from those products that I just talked about. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Human Performance Outliers podcast with Zach Bitter.